What I see really with a lot of daughters is how they treat people. If their father was respectful, not only to them, to their spouse, to servers, to other people, that's the thing that I think that a lot of daughters get from their fathers is how to react. And if you're fortunate enough to have a mom and a dad, then you get two different perspectives
Hmm.
on, with one feminine energy, one male energy. But you get two different perspectives on how to handle situations, how
Hmm.
to treat people, how to listen, how to interpret what they're saying. So I think
Hmm.
that's one of the big things.
Hmm.
I think the other thing is that as fathers, we have to trust our daughters.
Hmm.
I hate it when people say, "Oh my gosh, my daughter's dating. I got to show the guy the gun collection." Don't you trust your daughter to make the right decisions? Didn't you show her how to advocate for herself? Didn't you show her how to say no? And it's easier said than done. I get that. But I think that a lot of our responsibility as fathers is to show them to set boundaries and to be comfortable setting boundaries. And I think that's one of the biggest things daughters probably take away from fathers is how the boundaries were set and
Interesting.
how they speak up for themselves.
Welcome to the Daughter Podcast, where fathers become everyday heroes in their daughters' lives. Grow, evolve, and lead with love. Here's your host, Oscar Pina.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Daughter Podcast. Oscar here, your local growing girl dad. Today, to discuss the later stages of life of our daughters with Evan Sanchez, another local growing girl dad. And he's joining us to just riff on some of these topics that he deals with a lot in his work with later teens and grads. Evan, man, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, Oscar.
Oh man, I'm excited to have this conversation. During our phone call before the episode, we had to cut it short because we were just kind of going for a while, and I
Exactly.
was like, I should have just hit record, and we would have been good to go. Um, but you just had a lot of thoughts on your growth as a father, in particular with your daughter, and so that's what we'll get into today. Before we do that, let's get into who Evan is. Give us a little bit of your background with your work that you're doing now with grads and teens, as well as your background as a father and where you are now.
Sure. My name is Evan Sanchez. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and spent most of my life here. And I'm a life coach, and I primarily coach parents who have kids who are
Mm.
going through what I call the quarter life crisis. Somewhere in your 20s, you were put out into the world, and then the parents are left as the coach and the career advisor. And it's a new identity for them. It's very hard to know how to do that, especially since you're so close to the situation and you've seen
Yeah.
them since birth. So, what I do is I coach parents to have productive conversations, to have the hard
Mm.
conversations that allow their kids to grow and develop in a great way. And the beauty of it is that the way I teach parents on how to talk to their kids is primarily using open-ended questions. And the beauty of that is that then they have to reflect.
Mm.
And the beauty of that is that they're more likely to take action if
Interesting.
if they come up with the answer themselves. So
Yeah.
that's what I teach parents how to do.
I find your work interesting because, in the daughter community and just in this space of growth for fathers, we're always talking about developing our kids young, right? Like
Yes.
little to
Mhm.
middle to teenage to out of the house.
Right.
And not that we stop at that point, and we've had many conversations on the podcast where people talk about their kids after they graduated, after they left the house. So it's not that we stop there, but I don't think we've made a concerted effort to continue past that. Almost like, all right, 18 out of the house, cool. Like we've done our job, right? And,
Right.
and, and again, we don't stop there. If you're a good father, you want to stay connected. You want to continue to grow your relationship with your children as we grow. But it is interesting that as I think back and as we talked, I reflected. I was like, well, we kind of just stop there in these conversations. We're like, oh, well, we just, we got to get them through the teen years and then through the high school and then after that it was like, well, now they're good, like they've made it, which is not accurate, because as you're mentioning, and as we're seeing, the data tells us that it's hard for kids nowadays in that grad stage, and so obviously it's going to be hard for the parents as well. Hey, if you enjoy the Daughter Podcast, you'll love what we've got waiting for you at daughterpodcast.com. As soon as you visit, you'll be prompted to join our new email newsletter, a resource packed with valuable insights, practical tips, and powerful perspectives straight from our podcast episodes and incredible guests. Don't miss out on the chance to join the community and strengthen your journey as a father. Visit daughterpodcast.com today and subscribe, because great dads never stop growing.
Absolutely. I think that, what I love about your podcast is that there's a lot of work and there's a steep learning curve to having kids,
Yeah.
especially young kids.
Yeah.
It's a steep learning curve, and
Very.
it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard in many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
When they get to be 18 and older, it shifts because now they're a grown up.
Right.
Now they have more autonomy, they have more independence, they're used to doing things on their own. And we still have to be dads.
Right.
But we all know that there's a point in time when we become dumb.
Yeah.
When they know better than we do.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, that's true. And to a certain extent, that's not. Because
Right.
to the extent that it's true is that they know themselves better, right? They know what they want. But they also have a lot of growing up to do. They're still in a developmental stage. And
Yeah.
now we're throwing them out into the world and we're saying, oh, well, sink or swim, or,
Right.
it's, and that's probably a bit harsh, but I'm saying, like, we want them to take more of the reins,
Right.
but there's times when they come back to us and we have to be that coach, that dad.
Right.
Or sometimes when we need, you know what I mean? We have to balance this, like, relationship between
Mm-hmm.
being emotionally supportive and guiding them.
And guiding them, right.
And it's very hard to know what to do at all times. And there's no
Right.
like perfect prescription. But the thing I can say is that the older they get, the more we should be asking these reflective questions, making them come up with the answers rather than giving them the answers.
Okay.
I think that's really important.
Yeah. There's this concept that I've discussed with several guests on the show of the 777 strategy of parenting, or philosophy, or theory. I don't know what they call it. A tool, maybe. So the first 7 years of your child's life, you're loving them, and you're trying to build that relationship, that loving relationship, that connection, that child can now know that you're just, their protector, they love you, all these things. Then between 7 and 14, then you are a teacher. You're just teaching. I mean, you're trying to put as much information in there as possible, and that can be interpreted in a billion different ways, and we won't need to do that here. And then after 14, right, 14 and on, now if you've done your job, if you've built the connection, if you have taught them what they need to know, then the 14 and on, or the 7 years after that 14, now you're a guide and a coach, right? So no longer, hey, let me teach you this. Now it's almost like you're mentioning, and now I'm asking questions so that you can reflect, so that you can come up with answers, and hopefully I've done my job over here to give you that guidance, right? To instill the values and the principles and all the things that should help you make these decisions as you go through. the crazy thing is that when you're like 14 and under, and this is just like an outsider's perspective, right? You almost look at it like you're a technician almost with them, right? But as they start getting closer to that 14 and on, yes, you could still try to do that. However, you might be more disconnected, as you mentioned, to the realities of their now environment than you were when you were trying to teach them. So now I see it as kind of like the old trainer in the back, like or the policymaker in the back that's like, there's no way for me to make appropriate policy because I actually don't know what's going on the front line. My daughter does, but I don't. And it's hard because we're emotionally invested, but we have to figure out a way to do that. I can absolutely see the need for me to be like, hey, someone coach me out of this because I'm not seeing through what she's trying to do.
Right. It's really hard as they get older not to be emotionally involved
Yeah.
and not to repeat that advice that we were given.
Yeah.
I'm Gen X,
Yeah.
so it was very much go to school, get a job, you'll be fine.
Right. The big white
And
lie.
and yeah, and we know that's not true. So we also have to understand like what they're dealing with. And I think that's really important to have a different perspective and to not believe what we think
Well,
because that's a really it's really hard to say, well, this is the way I handled this when I was young.
yeah.
So this is the same way you should handle it when you're young.
Right.
It doesn't track.
Yeah. Well, you took us back to your Gen X, so let's start there before we keep going on these others. Take us back a little bit. You know, you growing up, uh, and then a little bit where your kids came to play, and kind of where you were mentally and emotionally to where you are now.
Sure. So Gen X, I came from a good family, middle class. Um, but one of the things about Gen X dads, and I think a lot of people can relate to this if you're Gen X, is that we weren't front and center. Our
Mm.
needs were not the primary concern. That's why, they'd have those ads at 10 o'clock at night saying, "Where are your children?" So,
True.
so a very different type of parenting, much more laissez-faire
Right.
in approach. And what that did for me is I felt neglected
Mm.
as a kid. I was fortunate I wasn't physically abused or sexually abused or anything like that. But I was just ignored. My priorities were not their priorities.
Hmm.
To the extent that, we moved overseas a couple times in South America. I had no input into it. So I felt even more disconnected and not seen.
Yeah.
There's a company extremely dedicated to restoring the dignity of hard work and the relentless pursuit of greatness. That company is Fuel Hunt, and I am honored and humbled to have them as our sponsor. They have built a community that is all about choosing discipline over comfort and taking pride in the journey because comfort is a slow death. Their clothing isn't just apparel or fight gear, it is our uniform. 100% American made, Fuel Hunt clothing is a daily reminder for me and those around me that I am committed to being among the few who truly hunt for their goals. Join the movement today and wear your ambition proudly. Everybody wants to eat, but only a few will hunt. Follow the link in the show notes and use GrillDat at checkout for 10% off your purchase.
And so, one of my things was when I have kids, I want to make sure that they're seen and heard.
Mm.
And that I'm there emotionally with them and that I try to understand their struggles.
Yeah.
And while I feel in some aspects I did a good job, I think I told you during the phone call that I
Mm.
failed
Hmm.
in the sense that my daughter, who's, in her 20s now, recently told me, "Dad, I was afraid of you for a period of time."
Mm.
And that's devastating.
Yeah.
It's like a knife to the heart to hear
Yeah.
that because I didn't want to inflict any trauma on my kids.
Right.
And I didn't want them to have to go through what I went through. And
Right.
fortunately, they didn't. And I was able to shield them from some of that. But
Right.
I still inflicted that trauma because I was sounds like an excuse, but I was stressed out. I wasn't feeling happy. I wasn't
Mhm.
doing things for myself to make me happy.
Right.
And I just felt this tremendous strain. And what I didn't realize at the time was that my daughter was neurodivergent.
Mm.
And basically what that means is that there's a scale, there's a spectrum, if you will,
Okay.
of, from severely autistic to, you know, high functioning.
Okay.
So there's this range of neurodiversity out there. And I didn't
Mhm.
realize that she was neurodiverse. Now she is high functioning,
Mhm.
so she can do a lot of things and she can take care of herself.
Right.
But things like transitions,
Mm.
things like she still wears baggy clothes because she doesn't like the seams.
Mm. Right.
The
Sensory.
tactile
Right.
sensory stuff,
Yep.
especially food, she's doesn't have the best diet,
Mhm.
so she's not willing to experiment with new foods, and
Right.
she's in her 20s. But I didn't realize that that was happening at the time, and I was like, "Why can't she just transition to the car faster?
Mhm.
Why can't she get out of this limited diet? Why can't she do
Right.
these things that I thought that she should be able to do by 10, 14, 15, 17,
Mhm.
so forth?" And when she told me that, obviously I apologized, that I was very sorry that she felt afraid of me because I'd get
Yeah.
angry when she wasn't doing these things and I just didn't
Right.
understand.
Yep.
Hey, if you enjoy the Daughter Podcast, you'll love what we've got waiting for you at daughterpodcast.com. As soon as you visit, you'll be prompted to join our new email newsletter, a resource packed with valuable insights, practical tips, and powerful perspectives straight from our podcast episodes and incredible guests. Don't miss out on the chance to join the community and strengthen your journey as a father. Visit daughterpodcast.com today and subscribe, because great dads never stop growing.
And I think there's really three lessons that I've learned from that.
Mhm.
And the first lesson is to accept people where they are, radical acceptance.
Okay.
And that's seeing who they are at the moment, but
Mhm.
not who you want them to be. And that I could have done a better job of, is
Mhm.
accepting her for who she is and not for who she isn't.
Mhm.
And then the second thing I learned was the comparison game. Why aren't you like your brother? Why aren't you
Mhm.
like your sibling? And why aren't you like, your classmates?
Mhm.
All that sort of stuff. And putting her on these artificial timelines of what I think she just should accomplish by X time.
Right.
And what I should have realized sooner is that she is on her own path, and that's okay.
Yeah.
She's not on my path. She may date later, she may do things later, but that's her path, and to
Right.
honor her path. So that's the second thing I learned. And the third thing I learned, and this I feel like I was pretty good at, is whenever she'd make a breakthrough,
Mhm.
small, medium, large, she would do something that a year ago she was afraid to do. Like if she
Mhm.
took a dog sitting job and she was afraid to go meet someone,
Mhm.
and then she starts doing it regularly. If she was afraid to drive on the highway, if she was anything, if she was afraid to advocate for herself in school,
Right.
I would praise her for that. And I would compliment her on those breakthroughs on a regular basis. And I
Right.
still do that to this day. And I think that's probably good for all kids to let them know that you're seeing their growth, that you're not treating them like they were when they were 5 years old. You
Mhm.
trust them a bit more, and you can see that they're developing into this new person, and you're proud of them.
Yeah. As you were mentioning, you said that as they're growing up, right, your grad, like, helping them to take those risks, that it starts where you're saying there, right? You're praising them for taking the risk. You're praising them for going out of their comfort zone to go do this thing that has to have some weight as they grow older.
Right. And the more they realize that it's okay to get out of your comfort zone, that lightning isn't going to strike you
Yeah.
when you're public speaking,
Right.
then the more apt they'll be to do harder things
Yeah.
later,
Yeah.
right? It's just a matter of looking at your child and seeing where they are in the process.
Yeah.
And, even now, and my daughter genuinely lights up, even though she's in her 20s, when I tell her how proud I am of her
Of
for
course.
making hard decisions, for doing hard things,
Right.
she still lights up about that.
Yeah. It kind of dug a little bit, as you said as well. If thinking through, my daughters are still relatively young. My oldest is 13, but having the playbook that we talked about, right? Like all of us have a playbook we're given growing up. It's just your parents are doing the best they can with what they got and with what they know,
Mhm.
right? And this essentially we're trying to do the same. Um, I remember being very impatient with my first child, like extremely impatient. So I almost feel like I can relate to that with you to say like, why aren't you move faster, do this? And we're always in a hurry, right? Always in a hurry. And so it creates these anxieties in the kids. And particularly, when I talk to my oldest, I know now that we have conversations, I know how much of that affected her and how she reacts to things now. I can't imagine the addition of having a child that's neurodivergent, because not only are you impatient because of how you were brought up and how whatever you experienced as a child, but now you had that added difficulty that, as you mentioned, you didn't catch early on.
Yeah, I was really blindsided by it, and I shouldn't have been.
Right.
I really shouldn't have been. I really, again, one of my regrets is that I didn't accept her for who she was at the time.
Mm,
And I was trying to rush my timeline onto hers.
right.
And that wasn't fair. And that was wrong. And I wish I would have known that previously.
Yeah.
It's hard we all know it's hard being a parent because you want your kid to be the best and the brightest.
Right.
When they were born, you just thought they were the most amazing thing ever, and you want
Yeah.
to keep
Absolutely.
that trajectory. And when they don't go on your timeline,
Hmm.
then it feels like somehow you failed as a parent.
Right.
And, when I talk to parents of, 20 something year olds and they're not finding their path, the parent feels like I failed.
Right.
I did something wrong. They have shame, they have guilt, they have a lot of worrying. They're constantly worried about
Hmm.
their child because they may not be adulting fast enough or they may not be getting that job fast enough,
Yeah.
and that's very stressful. And again, the best advice I can give is they're on their own path,
Yeah.
and that's okay. But it's hard as a parent to slow it down, to put
Yeah.
on the brakes and say, I got to step outside. I got to step outside the box here
Hmm.
and look at it from a different perspective. And that takes a lot of work. It's very hard to do that.
It does. Growth takes a lot of work. When did you know you needed to grow? So your daughter was born in '04,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Um, at what point did you know you needed to start changing?
I knew that I needed to start changing really when it was middle or high school. But
Mm,
the truth is that I should have been changing all along, right? And she did get diagnosed with anxiety, and I'm glad we got that diagnosis. And once we got that diagnosis, that was a big
mm,
relief. But
mm,
we always felt like something else was going on. And it's hard you know, m- anxiety very much shows up as ADHD or neurodivergence.
right.
So it's very hard to delineate that. And it took us a long time to figure that out. But once we got the evaluation done, we are like, oh, this makes sense.
Okay.
So, in answer to your question, it was probably middle or high school, but I think that, and we got her diagnosed late. Shame on us. It was like
Mhm.
18, right before she went to college. We got this diagnosis. And we should have realized it sooner. But we thought it was just
Yeah.
anxiety because it
Right.
presents the same.
Right.
So, but once we got the diagnosis, it was a relief for both us and for her. And I
Right.
said to her, I was like, the good thing about being neurodivergent, like by kind of having this ADHD thing, is that she has what we call restricted interests,
Okay.
right? Dogs, right? Harry Potter. She can go deep on those subjects and never, ever get bored.
Okay.
She's been fascinated with dogs for over a decade.
Hmm.
She's been fascinated with Harry Potter for a long time as well. And she can
Yeah.
go deep on those subjects. And I said to her, your neurodivergence is actually a superpower
Right.
because you can do this where other people may not be able to go as deep
Yeah.
on something. So, and she also said that when she got the diagnosis, she was like, "Oh, thank God."
Mm.
Because now she knows that it's the way her brain works.
Mm.
And the more information we know about how our brain works, the better we feel. If we know that there's, some sort of imbalance in some way and we recognize it, then we can solve it. The problem is not knowing.
Right. Well, so I follow a few I guess you call them influencers on social media, but they're 90s kids. Like
Hmm.
they made their shtick is, "Hey, I'm a 90s kid. Back in the 90s we did this."
Right.
And it's funny because I would say with 90% accuracy, it's like on point, right?
Hmm.
Like thinking back at growing up in the 90s, like I'm not saying that there was no ADHD or anything, but there wasn't. Like you were just being a disobedient kid, or you couldn't sit still, so then you get put on timeout, or and then also on the flip side, at least the way I grew up, like they never named it as a neurodivergence. They just said go outside and play, just go get tired, right? And again, it's a different context, different timing, but there's a point to that, right? So we talked a little bit about this, like the difference between little girls and little boys. Like we know that there's a difference there in how much a little boy can sit in a classroom and learn as opposed to a little girl. We have the data, and yet when we were growing up, like they just let us have a longer recess. Like my kids, Evan, my kids, their recess is, I want to say it's like 15 minutes, and it's one as a kindergartner, and I'm like, what are you guys doing the rest of you're a kindergartner, like what are you really learning here? Isn't it
Hmm.
mostly socialization and
Hmm.
maybe some ABCs? Like this shouldn't be this grand educational establishment. It's just you're a kindergarten. um and maybe I'm wrong and maybe I'm old and I can't remember, but I feel like I remember having way longer for recess because the teachers probably, bless their hearts, were like, just get him out of the classroom, right? But in the 90s, it just wasn't like if you had a neurodivergence, your parents were just like, he's just a crappy kid, man. Like he's hard, right?
Exactly, exactly. And in the 80s, it was even worse. I mean,
Right,
it was just like it. I mean, it was just like we had no concept of ADHD or
right.
neurodivergence or any of that.
Yeah.
There's a company extremely dedicated to restoring the dignity of hard work and the relentless pursuit of greatness. That company is Fuel Hunt, and I am honored and humbled to have them as our sponsor. They have built a community that is all about choosing discipline over comfort and taking pride in the journey because comfort is a slow death. Their clothing isn't just apparel or fight gear, it is our uniform. 100% American made, Fuel Hunt clothing is a daily reminder for me and those around me that I am committed to being among the few who truly hunt for their goals. Join the movement today and wear your ambition proudly. Everybody wants to eat, but only a few will hunt. Follow the link in the show notes and use GrillDad at checkout for 10% off your purchase.
And in the 90s, it wasn't much better, but I think that, you know, I've read studies from overseas and I don't remember them, but, in Germany, they spend, 2 hours playing outside in kindergarten,
Right. Yeah.
right? And I think there's something to that.
Absolutely.
I think they've done some better research, and they're
Mhm.
not so rigid about this, like, education all the time.
Right.
And I think there's something to that because I think that kids are naturally supposed to move around a lot,
Right.
especially in kindergarten. You
Well, it's
know, I
almost like you're going to harness things. So to your point, your daughter, you found out that there's these certain things you can actually harness her energy to, and she's really good at,
right.
right? And I think that might be, again, this is just knuckle dragging. I don't know the research guys, but if you're saying that they have 2 hours to play outside in these other countries, like maybe we're just harnessing some energy. They figured it out, and they're probably getting better outcomes in the classroom just based off of that.
Exactly, exactly. They're realizing what their kids need at the time,
Yeah.
and not just drilling them with
Yeah.
schoolwork. I think that there is something to be said for more recess time, more, and
Yeah.
also especially in America, like we feel guilty as adults if God forbid we go for a walk or God forbid we do something for ourselves or go outside.
Mhm.
And we know that, in Iceland, 4-day work weeks are the norm and productivity increases
Way better.
substantially,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I think it's hard to do that. I think it's and as parents that you get home and you're exhausted
Mhm.
and they're still full of beans, and I think that's hard too. I think it's a
Yeah.
combination of so many things that we have to keep track of. We have to keep track of how are we showing up energetically?
Right.
What do they need right now? I mean, my wife works in the school and there's some kids who just need deep sensory input. Like they
Mm.
just need to be hugged like bear hugs just to calm down.
Mhm.
And that's what they need. Everyone's different. And I think
Interesting.
as we get older, if we're lucky, we get to figure out like what what kind of exercise do I like to do?
Mhm.
Right? What feels good on my body? For
Right.
some people, swimming is going to feel better than running,
Right.
which is going to feel different from taekwondo. So that's again like why I think that kids should grow up with a variety of options
Mhm.
if they can, if they're lucky enough to have those options, then they should try those. I know my son went through taekwondo, he went through badminton, he went through soccer, football,
Mhm.
all of these sports until he found rowing.
Right.
And now he's a rower and that's what works for him. He's
Yeah.
also really tall at 6'5" and 18, but
Yeah.
which helps. But he had to find the right sport for him.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the beauty of being a parent is that we can give them options and just follow their lead. You never know where it's going to lead.
Right. Let me ask you this. So you're talking about how you were brought up um, in an environment where not probably not purposely is just the context of when you were brought up, and your needs not necessarily being upfront, right? So you talked about kids wanting to be heard. There's these concepts lately that are showing some evidence that these kids that are graduating high school are not prepared for what the world brings because we've ultimately cuddled too much, gave them so much time to be heard, and it's like all these different things that I see it as kind of like spoiled them in that, right? Because I'm sure you'll agree, there's a fine line with almost anything. There's a very deep dichotomy with all parenting. Like you could go too harsh, you can go very light, and then you get one or the other product. So the goal is to be kind of in the center. Um, I also grew up more of, children should be seen, not heard, and go outside and play because the adults are talking, that kind of stuff. Um, where we went to go eat wasn't necessarily my option or opinion. It was just where we went. or where we got to eat, if you will. We didn't really go to eat places much. But as you work with these parents and these young adults starting to face the world, how do you balance that dichotomy? Because it is a dichotomy. I want to hear my daughters. I try to do my best to get their input and see where they're at, right? With certain things, with most things. And then there's points where I'm like, no, this is not up to you.
Mhm.
This is what's happening. And that's usually something that my wife and I came to an agreement with, or whatever, right? Like you name a situation, you can start to what if it all you want. But how do you start to manage that dichotomy as a coach of parents? You've got to be able to see like both sides of the heavy coin, meaning like you either heard them or coddled them too much over here, and now they're out in the world and they, someone told them no, and they're like, well, wait a minute, that's not going to fly. Or you didn't hear them enough and they make themselves super small in the world so they can't go. And so talk to me about that, because the more and more I listen to fathers talk on here and the fathers group that I'm with, like these dichotomies get real slippery. And you're in the context of that exact point of life where a kid is now a product, let's just say, a product of their parents, right? So now they're going into the world. You've got to be able to see both sides of that coin.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. I think that what I notice with the parents is that they have a lot of things that they're imposing on the kid, whether they realize it consciously or not.
Okay.
No parent is perfect. And it's always hard to show up as your best self if you're feeling
Mhm.
beaten down, if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not, if you feel like a victim at work and you're just living
Yeah.
paycheck to paycheck, you're not going to show up as your best self at
Yeah.
home. It's really, really hard to do that. On the other hand, you do have to, to your point, walk the line between,
Yeah.
no, I'm kicking you out of the house,
Right.
and also, what do you want to do with your life?
Right.
And so there's ways to it's obviously situation based depending on the parent and the kid about what's going on there. But yes, I do see both sides of it, because I see
Mm.
the kids saying, I want to be seen and heard,
Mhm.
and the parents saying, no, just do it my way.
Right.
And it's yeah, it's hard. I mean,
Yeah.
but the thing is that you can have, like, I talk about kids who are not off the payroll. Like,
Okay.
maybe they're outside the house, but they're not off the payroll.
Okay.
Okay, so they're still on the cell phone plan, they're still on the health insurance plan.
Right.
They may be getting, may have gotten a car, or
Right.
their car insurance is being paid for, things like that. There's ways to have that conversation that are productive.
Mm.
There's ways to have that conversation where you say, what would this look like for you to take care of these finances
Mhm.
without it being overwhelming? What would that look like? And then, ask them, over what period of time would that happen? Now, you may not like their answers,
Right.
but there's some negotiating room there. But you can have those difficult conversations with them in a way that still puts them with feeling empowered, and you setting a boundary at the same time.
Mm.
So there are ways to have those conversations that can take you from, I have to kick my kid out of the house,
Mhm.
and this is what it is,
Right.
and then talking to them about it. Again, there's a spectrum of things that could
Right.
happen, but yeah, it's as the Kenny Rogers says, knowing when to hold them, knowing when to fold them, and knowing
Right.
when to walk away
Yeah.
is the hardest part.
Yeah.
So I do see both sides of the coin, and
Yeah.
I do want the parents to be there for their kids, but I also see the kids saying, you may have restricted me a lot in
Mhm.
childhood, and now I'm rebelling.
Right.
I saw that with a lot of my friends who were
Mm.
under like strict rules, and then
Right.
they got to college and went crazy,
Of course. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So there's all those stories. But I think that there is a way to have those conversations that are still respectful.
Yeah.
And it has to be respectful on both sides.
Right. Yeah.
And
Especially once they get to adulthood, right? It's interesting that we're having this conversation because I see it from on my perspective, you know, young new employees come in and they're like, I need to be heard and respected. And this is like, for what? Like, what have you done in this space, whatever that might be, to feel so entitled? And that's kind of where, and maybe it's just the old teachings in me, right? But it's just like, I couldn't go to a place and feel entitled. Like, my parents weren't going to allow that, right? And there was good ways to take care of that, and there was bad ways to take care of that. Again, we don't have to get into that specific, but nowadays there's a couple things that I see with that. There's a sense of a lot of entitlement,
Mhm.
right? And then there's also with that same sense of entitlement, a lot of young people, and I was just looking at a research the other day, and I can't remember the number, so I'm not going to try to quote it, but it's talking about kids not leaving the house. And it is referred to like the economy and all these different things, right? So your 18 plus is just at the house. That's where they live. They don't, they may or may not pay rent depending on the arrangement. But even before that, there's a big number of teenagers that don't even want to drive. Like they don't have the drive to get their license and to like like launch out.
Right, right.
And
I was in such a rush to get my license.
right,
I went down to the DMV as soon as I humanly could,
absolutely. Like I
and
could not.
my kids were like, "Eh."
Yeah,
You
exactly. Like, I
know,
don't, I don't, I don't feel like it. And when I look at that, I'm like, one, I can't concept it because I was the same. Like, when
right.
can I get my license? When can I get a vehicle?
Mhm.
Whose vehicle can I borrow? Do I have enough gas money? I'm out. Like that's what I'm thinking. And so it doesn't register in my brain. And then at the same time, I'm sitting here and thinking, will I be able to just tell my daughters like, no, go get your license. I'm not driving you anywhere. Figure this out, right? Because that's the harsh side. And
Right.
I think, like that's also a slippery slope. Um, but at the same time, like I don't want to empower them not to go grow up. But that's what it feels like. So talk to me a little about that since you're in that realm. I
Yeah.
mean, I know you're talking grads, so not necessarily your high school kids getting their license, but the study mentioned that up to 18 to 20 are still not with a license. Like they're not looking to go drive anywhere.
Yeah, I remember that with my kids. They didn't weren't in a rush to get their license. I was in a
Right.
rush to get their license because I didn't wanna be the Uber driver anymore, and my wife didn't wanna be the Uber driver anymore.
Right.
So, yeah, it's tough because when we were growing up, the internet was not that thing,
Yeah.
right? And so our socialization required us to go outside the house.
Right.
They can socialize at home, although it's different.
Yeah.
They can do it at home. But yeah, if your kid doesn't want to drive, then and you want to be out of the Uber business, then that's a conversation that you have to have.
Yeah.
And that's a tough conversation you have to have.
Yeah.
You have to be like, I understand you don't want to get your license. I hear you. I see you.
Mm,
At the same time, I would like to not be your Uber driver
right.
because I have a job
Right.
and it's hard to find time off.
Well, one concept that I get to is that I feel the responsibility as a father, and this is a role that I um, willingly take, and it's not a popular opinion because the whole female male roles in the household, whatever. This is
Mhm.
a role that I willingly take. I feel the responsibility of being a proxy for the real world, right? I want to again, there's a fine line and there's
Mhm.
very sensitive dichotomies here.
Right.
But I want to be able to present to my daughters what the real world will look like so that they're prepared for it, because I'm not going to be around forever.
Right.
And I say I willingly take that role because my wife is the more nurturing person in our family. And so I'm like, good. I'm glad to have that. Let me tell you how life's going to work, right? And I tell my daughters this: you're not going to go to work to a brand new job and then expect to be respected in that job. That's not how life works, right? Like this is not, you know, you're going to be the new person and you're not going to be heard, and you have to be able to deal with that. So all
Yeah.
that to say is I I want to be that proxy. I want to do it with love, and obviously as their father, I'm the
Mhm.
probably the one person other than their mother that 100% wants to see them succeed. So I'm here for their benefit, right? But I also want to make sure that they know what life actually brings to them.
Right, and life is not fair outside of the household.
Life is not fair in the household.
It's not fair in the household,
No.
and it's not fair outside of the household, so life is not fair. And so that's one of the things I've told my kids from very young age is
Yeah.
I keep reminding them that life is not fair.
We don't
And
say the F word here. My wife always rolls her eyes at me, and
okay,
the F word in our house is fair.
okay, okay.
And I promise you, the only one that says it right now is my 5-year-old. That's not fair. And I say, that's right. It's not fair. You know? And I tell
Right.
her, I'm like, you know what you can do that your 13-year-old sister can't do? Come sit on me and we're just playing around. I don't do that with her like I do it with you. It's different. It's
Right.
not fair.
It's not fair.
Right.
But you know, especially when they go out into the real world and have like challenges of not
Yeah.
being seen and heard at work and assuming that corporate is
Right.
not going to bully them in some
Right.
way,
Yeah.
which they, from my lived experience, it's been pretty much the norm that
Right.
you're bullied in corporate and in some sort of ways, not all places, but most of them. They're
Right.
not going to be fair to you.
Yeah.
They're going to run you hard and they're not going to
Give you the fair shake.
they're not
Right.
going to give you a fair shake.
Yeah.
Hey, if you enjoy the Daughter Podcast, you'll love what we've got waiting for you at daughterpodcast.com. As soon as you visit, you'll be prompted to join our new email newsletter, a resource packed with valuable insights, practical tips, and powerful perspectives straight from our podcast episodes and incredible guests. Don't miss out on the chance to join the community and strengthen your journey as a father. Visit daughterpodcast.com today and subscribe, because great dads never stop growing.
And so, yeah, it's hard. You have to prepare them for that fact that it's going to be really hard out there.
Yeah.
And I think that what you're saying is that you're trying to prep them for that now because it's really worse once they get outside.
Right.
But again, the way you do that is by modeling the conversations,
Right.
right? Like anger doesn't work.
Yeah.
And that's very hard when you're stressed out and you're tired and
Right.
your energy's low and their energy's high and you're just like you just want to you wish somebody would put you in timeout.
That's
Right.
right.
So it's all of this stuff that's yeah, we have to prepare them for, but we have to prepare them for the conversations and show them how to have the conversations
Yeah.
with respecting each other
Right.
and being productive.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hard thing is like you do have to speak up for yourself if you're feeling bullied inside the house or outside the
Yeah.
house. But there's certain ways to approach that are
Right.
effective. It's a balancing act between, being strong in your convictions
Mm-hmm.
and being a jerk.
Yeah. No, I get that for sure. And
So,
I think that's part of what we see now, right? When you see these young kids protesting, for example, and then you have someone that disagrees with them, and then you have a squabble, and I'm like, what is going on? What have we as parents taught where, to your point, we can't respectfully disagree with people.
Right. And there's ways to have a respectful disagreement. And
Right.
there's ways to talk to people. But yelling and shouting and blaming is not the way to go.
No.
And that's what we really have to model. And also one of the things that I try to do is that when I'm wrong, I take responsibility for
Right.
it. And I
Right.
want to show them that. I don't want to, I joke with them. I was like, I'm a perfect parent, and they just roll their eyes at me
Yeah.
because
Right.
they know better. They know better. I'm always perfect. I always make the best decisions because that's
Right.
what I thought adults did when I was little. I thought they were all perfect, and
Yeah.
and then you get to be an adult, and you're like, nobody knows what the hell they're doing. So
Yeah. I mean, you're a kid. You're like, I can't wait to be an adult to make my own decisions. And then you
right.
get to adult, you're like, can't wait to go be a kid. That would be way better.
Exactly. I'm looking at my son in college, and I'm like, can I go back to college? That sounds awesome.
Right? Absolutely.
Right? Community, not worrying about the household and things
Yeah.
falling apart and all that sort of stuff. But again, we have to accept responsibility when we're wrong. We have to apologize when we're wrong. We have to show that side of ourselves
Right.
and say that we're not always perfect and that we do make mistakes. So
Right.
that's the only thing that we can do is just model the behavior that we want them to do when they get to be an adult.
Right.
And it's going to be hard out there. They're going to have challenges that we cannot possibly prepare them for.
Yeah.
But once they get into the workforce, I had somebody, I was a manager, and and we hired this young person, and I said to her, I was like, we need to put the content calendar together over here.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the CEO to see it, you need to put it over here.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, well, that's double work. And I said, yes. And she was like, that's wrong. And I said, I agree.
Yeah.
But the point is, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Because the CEO was only going to look at it through this lens
Right.
on this portal and not through our portal. So yes, I agreed with her, and she wasn't wrong to push back,
Right.
but she didn't realize that it was probably not the hill to die on.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
It's okay to push back, but again, knowing when to fold them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And you can make your point, but you can also belabor it.
Right. Well, Evan, we're getting short on time here, but give us a little info on what you do, the information for your coaching, and where people can find you.
Sure. I'm all over LinkedIn, so you can see me there. And I just started my YouTube channel, so I'm excited about that.
All right.
It's called New Grad Launchpad.
Okay.
And so you can find my content there. There's a lot of tips and advice on how to have these conversations, on what to do.
Mm-hmm.
If you're interested in my coaching services, I do have a website. It's newgradlaunchpadcoaching.com. So it's a bit of a mouthful,
Yeah.
but you can set up a meeting with there. Probably easier to go on LinkedIn and just DM me.
Okay.
Is probably the best way. And really what I'm helping parents do is to make sure that they're showing up better and having those conversations in a productive way. And that's what I'm really passionate about, because I really want the parents to feel good and I want the kids to feel good. And the parents are the environment where the kid grows.
Right.
And I think in this crazy day and age, we all need as much support as we can get.
I couldn't agree with you more. We'll have all of those links for Evan down in the show notes, so you guys can click it and get to him real easy. Man, it's been great having you on here. I think if we really didn't try too hard, we could be here for another couple hours talking about this stuff.
Easily.
But it's really good to have that perspective of not the other side, but as we take our kids towards that grad side, as they start to grow into their adulthood, we can still be a positive factor in their lives as we continue to learn and grow as fathers. So thank you so much for coming on here and sharing that wisdom with us.
Oh, thank you so much, Oscar. It's been an absolute pleasure.
For the rest of you guys, hopefully you took notes. If not, you can go back to the episode, re-listen to it over and over again, and get all the wisdom dropped down. Until next time, we will see you all later.
This has been the Daughter Podcast. Be sure and share this show with a friend. Like, subscribe, follow us on social media, and leave us a review. For everything Girl Dad, head over to daughterpodcast.com. That's daughterpodcast.com.